Hello YouTube. Today I have a quick little build for you. This is a knife sharpener. Just uses some household items and some things that you can find at your local Hobby Lobby. So it's pretty easy. Here we go. Okay, so the things you're going to need are a scrap piece of leather. You can find these at Hobby Lobby. They're pretty cheap usually. A scrap piece of wood. I used a 2x4 because I figured it would be the right width. And you're going to take into mind however much distance you want to be able to pull the blade of your knife. You're going to need a little bit more to hold on to it to keep your hand back away. You're going to need some rubber cement and a stapler. This stapler will need to open up like this so that you can staple objects that you're not able to fit in between the jaws. And you'll also need some sturdy shears or a utility knife, or I'm using tin snips. Tin snips come in really handy for lots of things, just to cut the leather. Alright, let's get into the build. First thing you're going to do is mark out the amount of leather you're going to need. You'll want just enough to overlap on the front of your piece of wood so that you can staple it in place. So I decided that it's probably 6 to 7 inches. That would be plenty. Preferably do this on the side that you'll put onto the actual wood itself. Flip the wood over, line up one edge. Again, leave a little bit hanging over so that you can flip it up and staple it onto your wood. And go along the end and the edge of the wood. And after that, you'll cut it out. Okay, so like I said, to fasten this leather strip down to this piece of wood here, this 2x4, I'm going to use rubber cement. Now you will need something to keep the leather down and keep this corner tight over here after you've applied the rubber cement. So I'm thinking I'm going to use probably some string or some cord and tie around the 2x4 and the leather to keep it down. If you have like a quick clamp, those work really well too for things like this. So to start off, just figure out how far down your leather is going to extend, and just put a small dot, or you could put a line all the way across, but it's just so you know that you don't need any rubber cement past that point. And I would get whatever it is you're going to use to clamp this leather down with, I would get that ready. Okay, so now we're ready for the rubber cement. You'll want to get a good covering of this. I'm not saying like lay it on super thick, because honestly that's not going to add very much strength, if any at all. Just make sure that you cover the entire surface over with rubber cement, all the way up to, and it's especially important to get it up to the point where the leather ends. Okay, and just lay this down on the rubber cement, lay it down nice and tight, make sure it's in the center, and kind of stretch it out there. And you'll want this to be fairly tight, just because if you have it a little loose, you're going to end up with bubbles or wrinkles potentially, which is not something you want, believe me. And I think I'm actually going to get another thin piece of wood and lay across this to make sure that this end stays flat. We'll just see. Whatever you do, make sure that none of the ends are sticking up or flaring up, because the knife could potentially catch them, and that would not be good. Okay, so after letting this sit overnight and letting the rubber cement cure, here's the finished product. Doesn't look like much, but believe me, it will get your knife very sharp. I did have to actually get a clamp to hold the leather in place because it kept wanting to slide down the piece of wood. So I just clamped it on the end while the cement was curing. Now you just need to know how to use this thing. Now, the point at which you would use this would be like the very last in the process of sharpening your knife. You would start with like a grinder, or some people will use like a worktop belt sander with a very fine grit on it. Then after that you would go to whetstone and then to a steel, and some whetstones are very fine and you can use those in place of a steel. And then you would go to this. And this really doesn't even grind away at your blade, it really more polishes it to an edge rather than grinding it to an edge. So it's very fine and it can get your blade very sharp if you know what you're doing. So now let's get into actually what you do with your knife. Okay, now you're ready to see how to use this. With those other things that I named previously, the whetstone and the steel, you actually push the blade edge first into whatever object it is that you're using, the steel or the whetstone. You push it edge first to get the blade worn down into the angle that you want. But on this, you don't want to do that. You actually pull away. You lay the blade down on the leather at whatever angle you choose, the more gradual, the sharper the blade would be, and you lay it down at the base of the blade. Now, for this knife, since it is serrated, I cannot start right down there at the bottom. I have to start right up here. So, lay the blade down, angle it, and you pull slowly, applying a little bit of force, and as you pull, you want to rotate your blade so that by the time you get to the end of the strip of leather, the very tip of the blade is what's rubbing on it, and you go away from the edge, just like this, pulling and curving the blade at an angle as you do so, and then you'll flip it over and you'll go the opposite direction, away from yourself. It's kind of like spreading butter, really, but with a weird twist at the end of it. So you pull one direction and angle, pull the other direction away and angle, and just go back and forth. So this method is what you would use, be the final one in the process of sharpening a knife if you're really looking for a razor sharp blade. I hope you've had fun building this, and I hope it is very useful for you.